Are you tired of confusing and conflicting reports on the real estate market and just want some concise information? Well, if so, that's exactly what I'm hoping to give you in this video. In this video, we're gonna go over 4 things that I'm looking at that really paint the picture on what's going on in the real estate market. Starting with the falling mortgage interest rates. To add, we're gonna talk a little bit about the current real estate activity, and we're going to talk a little bit about the current pricing or home values that we're seeing in the real estate market. We're going to dive a little bit into new construction and what we're seeing there. And then lastly, I'm going to do my best to summarize that for you so that you know exactly what that means to you if you're thinking about buying or selling real estate in 2023. The National Association of Realtors just put out a recent article that states that, activity is up. They've compared the current real estate market to 2020 and looked at the similarities. And to be honest, we're seeing more contracts being signed month over month right now than we actually were seeing in 2020, which was, again, January 2020 was pre-pandemic. So I want to drill that in now that the comparison is pre-pandemic. Let's talk a little bit about these falling mortgage interest rates. The National Association of Realtors just in this article stated that a 30-year fixed mortgage, the average interest rate that we're seeing right now is right around 6%. Now, a few months back, we actually were seeing some buyers get mortgage interest rates closer to 7, if not in the 7s. But now those rates are a little bit more stable and they've come down to about 6%, which ultimately is showing buyers that the mortgage rates are not going to go back down to the 2%, right? I feel like some people may have waited to see if that was going to happen, which it's not. But ultimately, we're not seeing these rates all over the place, which ultimately gives buyers some confidence again, some confidence to re-enter the market. And that's exactly what we're seeing. A lot of the buyers who sat on the sidelines, waited things out, and now that those interest rates are stable and again have come down, that has created some more activity, which brings me to the overall activity in the market. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, when compared to January of 2020, we're seeing more contracts being signed in 2023 than we saw in 2020. But we're actually seeing about 24% less contracts being executed right now than we did over the course of the pandemic. So if you were to average out the amount of contracts that were being signed and executed during the pandemic, right now, since we're considered to be out of the pandemic when it comes to the real estate market or the real estate market activity, we're about 24% down overall. So the market is active, but it's not like it was in 2021 and 2022, which ties back into all of the things I've been saying over the last few weeks, if not the last few months, where if you're a buyer, now is a better time for you to enter the real estate market simply because, again, we're down roughly 24%, which is why we're seeing homes on the market a little bit longer, which is why we're seeing buyers negotiate some terms that are actually in their favor. So the market activity is still strong, but down in comparison to what we've seen. So what's going on with the pricing of homes? We all know that homes throughout the pandemic, the values just skyrocketed. We've never seen that type of appreciation in a short period. But NAR is now forecasting that they think that homeowners in 2023 may lose a little bit of value. Now, again, don't let that have you fall out of your chair if you bought a home. It's a marginal dip. Per NAR, they're estimating somewhere around 1.6% of a decline in values, bringing the national average somewhere right around 380,000. But here's the caveat. They also state that they expect for home prices to excel again in 2024. And if you're wondering how much they're forecasting those homes to appreciate next year, well, it's just over 3%. NAR is forecasting that homes in 2024 are going to appreciate at roughly 3.1%. So if you bought a home and you're following these numbers, don't be too concerned about the slight dip this year because you're going to make it back next year. What about new construction? Now, new construction is different because builders have the ability to incentivize. And that's exactly what happened in the new construction market. The new construction market is actually doing relatively well. The activity is there, but 57% of new home builders said that they had to give some type of incentive to buyers in order to sweeten the deal, in order for the buyers to actually go ahead and execute those contracts. And some of those incentives were either things like buy downs or special financing offered by the builders, or maybe even some additional bells and whistles at base price. But the builders had to get creative, as we've seen some of the traditional sellers do. But one caveat with new construction when compared to the existing home market is that the builders or new construction has actually already started to see a dip in their prices. So as I mentioned, in 2023, they're forecasting for existing homes to have somewhat of a slight dip, but we're already seeing that when it comes to new construction homes, which I thought was relatively interesting. Maybe builders started building too much too soon. Who knows? But ultimately, the new construction market is still active, but there is definitely some shifting going on there, to say the least. So at the end of the day, what does all of this mean to you? What does it mean to you, the buyer or the seller? Ultimately, what this states is that this is still a very positive, active real estate market with lowering interest rates, with contract execution being up, with buyer confidence coming back into the market. All of these things are indicating that it is going to be an active market in 2023. But with inventory being low, to be honest with you, it will still be a challenge for buyers. Make sure you're aligning yourself with the right team, right loan officer, creative realtor. Make sure you're doing your homework and know your options. And most importantly, make sure that you have a realistic expectation, whether you are a buyer or a seller entering the real estate market this year. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out. There's always a buyer and or seller guide available for you in the description, as well as a link for you to get on my calendar. 15-minute consultation with me cost you nothing but 15 minutes of your time. So with all of that said, thanks, and I will catch you on the flip side.